Masechet Baba Batra Daf Ayin Dalid. We continue the Agadot in the name of Rabba Bar Chana, and we are now going to introduce a new character. It's an Arab tour guide. We'll see a series of stories about him, and they have a mnemonic siman ke'afra dechelta terakte akraba lesilte. We're going to start off with a story about dust, and then about techelet, sky blue, and about a scorpion stung the basket. We'll see all those things. Ve'amar Rabba Bar Chana zimna hada. Hava kazlinan b'madbera ve'itlaveh behada nahu taya'a tahava shakil afra umorach le ve'amar ha'orcha leduchta pelan ve'ha'orcha leduchta pelan. So Rabba Bar Chana reports that one time he was traveling in the desert and he was accompanied by an Arab who he knew which way to go. He could just take dust and smell it and say, oh, this dust from this path, this is a road to this place. And he would take dust from the other path. This is a dust from the path to that place. He was such a good guide. And so one time we asked him, how far is it to get from here to the water? He said, give me some dust from the floor. So we gave it to him, and he smelled it. And he said, oh, this is 8 parsangs from here to the water. We said a parsang is a little over 2 miles. Tenenan vihabinan levamarlan timrachakinan telata parse afachitle layichilitle. And then they walked for a while, and they gave him dust again. And he says, okay, now we're 3 parsangs away from the water. But Rabba Bar Chana said, I then switched the dust. He kept some dust from a different place and gave it to him to see if this Arab is doing magic tricks, or does he really know what he's doing. And so he tested him by giving him dirt from a different place, and Rabba Bar Chana was not able to confuse him. He was able to say, oh, this dirt is from that other place that you brought. And so you see, he really knew his stuff. Amar li ta'achvi lach mete midbar. So the Arab said, listen, I want to give you a tour of some different interesting places. Let me show you the deceased of the wilderness. That's Bnei Israel, those who died during the 40 years as they were traveling in the desert. They are buried out there in the wilderness. So come, I'll show you one of their bodies. Azli chazitin hu vedamu keman demi basemi veganu aparkid. And so Rabba Bar Chana says, I went and I saw, and I said it looked like a person who was intoxicated, and he was lying on his, and they were lying on their backs. Vavazikifa birke dechad minaihu. And the knee of one of them was elevated. Now he has his knee bent. He's lying on his back with a knee bent. And this corpse was so large that the Arab was able to ride under his knee, riding a camel with a spear upright, and didn't even touch him. That's how giant this body of the deceased from Bnei Israel from back in the time of the desert was. All these seem like they're allegorical. What is the idea here? That they were great people. So we're explaining their greatness in terms of size, but really it's talking about their moral and spiritual high level. Sometimes we think of the generation of the desert as being terrible because we have a lot of stories about them complaining and doing this and that. But we have all the negative stories there, but we have to remember that this was also the generation that Moshe led out of Egypt and was at Har Sinai, and so in other ways they were great people, and so this is an expression of how great they were. This is an important Gemara because you see that they were lying on their backs, and this is a source for the halacha and the widespread custom that even till today we bury deceased on their backs. Maybe the idea is that they're looking up, looking towards heaven. Pesaki chada karna detchelta dechad minayhu velahava mistage lan. And so Rabba Bar Chana says, I saw that they were wearing sisit, they were wearing techelet garments, and he cut one of the corners of the garments because he wanted to take it with him. However, then Rabba Bar Chana was not able to walk. Amar li dilma shakalt midi minayhu. So the Arab didn't see Rabbi Chanat cut the corner of their garment, but he saw that they weren't able to walk, and he said, "Oh, you must have did you take something from them? You can't. These people are. Hashem took an oath that they will die in the desert, and they cannot come into the land. And so not only them at that point, but even all their stuff, even forever. So you can't take anything from that spot." Azali ad ahadrite v'hadar mistagilan. So the Arab said, "Go return it, because we have a tradition that anyone who takes something from them will not be able to leave, won't be able to walk." And so Rabbi Bar Chana returned that corner of the garment, and then they were able to go. Now Rabbi Bar Chana reports what happened to the rabbis. Ki atai lekamed Rabbanan amru li kol abba hamara v'chol Bar Chana sichsa. When the rabbis heard his story, they degraded Rabbi Bar Chana. They said every abba is a donkey. Every rabba is short for Rabbi Abba. So that was his personal name, Abba. So every abba, they mean you, is a donkey, and every Bar Chana, that's also him, is an idiot. Why? הלכתה עבד תחי, למדע אי כבית שמאי אי כבית הלל, אי באילך לממנה חוטין ולממנה חוליות. For what halacha did you want to take the corner of that garment with you? Why do you want to take it with you? Oh, you wanted to learn a halacha, must be. To know is the halacha like Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel. Elsewhere in Masechet Menachot, there's a machloket about how many threads one uses. We follow Bet Shammai, where we have 4 threads. We loop it into the corner, fold it over, so that you end up with 8. Bet Hillel, whoever said that you only have three threads that you put into the hole, fold it over for 6. So you wanted to know what the halacha is? Well, you didn't have to take it with you in order to figure that out. You could have just stood there, counted, and then remembered how many strings are there and how many joints. Joints is the number of times that you take the one string and it wraps around the other. How many sections like that do you have? So you should have just sat there and counted. You didn't have to cut off the thing and take it with you. Incidentally, this is also a source for the custom that we bury the dead in a talit. Some a regular talit, some a talit that is pasul. Cut one of the corners, and so it will be pasul. But you see here that these deceased in the desert were lying face up, and also had a talit on them. Amar li ta'achvi lach Har Sinai. Now the Arab says, let's go to the next stop, and I will show you where Har Sinai is. Azali chazai dehadra le akaraba vekayama ki chamarechi varte. And so he went, and I saw that there were scorpions encircling Har Sinai, and these were very big. They were standing as high as white donkeys, maybe protecting it. People shouldn't go and desecrate it. Shamati bat kol sheomeret oy li shenishbati v'achshav shenishbati mi mefer li. And Rabbi Bar Chana heard a divine voice saying, "Woe to me that I took an oath. Who is there that could undo this oath?" Seems to be referring to an oath that Hashem said that if they violate the Brit, then Hashem will punish them. He said that at Har Sinai, Poked Avon Avot, or the oath that Hashem said that whole generation is going to die in the desert. The oath that when Bnei Israel sin, they will go into exile. So Hashem felt bad. I promised that I'm going to punish the Jewish people when they sin. I made that promise before, but now that I see how much suffering they're undergoing, I wish I could undo that promise so that I can lessen their punishment and bring the redemption now. But what can I do? I'm stuck by my own promise. So that's the voice that he heard. Ki atay lekame de Rabbanan amru li kol abba chamara v'chol baba bar Chana sichsa. When Abba bar Chana came and told the rabbis that he went to Har Sinai and he heard this divine voice, they said again, every Abba is a donkey, every Bar Chana is an idiot. Haya lecha lomar mufar lecha. Rabbi, you should have said your vow is a annulled. There's another famous midrash about Hashem saying, I made a vow, and Moshe sitting down like a judge and annulling Hashem's vow. The idea is that even Hashem needs a rabbi to go to do Hatarat Nedarim. And so he had a rabbi there, so Rabbah could have said, Hashem, I annul your vow. Why? Oh, you didn't mean it, you didn't realize the consequences when you said that vow of how terrible their suffering would be, and you should have undone the vow. If you had said Mufar Lecha, then that's it, the vow of punishment and exile could have been cancelled. Now, how come Rabba bar Chana did not do that? Because he thought that the divine voice was referring to the oath that Hashem said, I will not destroy the whole world. Again, that's the oath that he said after the flood. He thought that Hashem was saying, I wish I could I want to destroy the world. What can I do? I made a vow that I'm not going to destroy the world. So he says, okay, I'm not going to undo that vow. Let's keep that vow in place so that the world will continue. But Rabbanan say, no, if Hashem says, woe to me means Hashem is suffering. He doesn't like to see his creation suffering. He doesn't like to see his Jewish people suffering. And that's why he's saying, woe to me. So obviously he's talking about the oath that he has to punish them, not the oath from the time of the Mabul. And so Rabba bar Chana should have annulled it. Amar li, tach v'ilach belo'eh de Korach. Next stop on our tour, the Arab says, come, I'll show you the place where Korach was swallowed up down into the earth. Chazai tere biz'eh v'avu kama peke kutra, shekal gebaba de'amra ve'amshina b'maya, u'da'asita berosha derumha ve'ayeleh l'hatam. V'chi api kava icharach icharuche. And so they went to that place, and Rabba bar Chana saw two rifts in the ground, and smoke was coming out of them. The Arab took some wool, dipped it in water. Now, wool in water is not going to burn very easily. It's all wet. And he put it on the head of a spear, because he didn't want to get too close, because it's so hot. And he put that tuft of wet wool from the top of the spear, he stuck it into that hole in the ground. And then he took it out. And it was all scorched, right? Just a few seconds there. That's how hot it is under there. Amar li, asit mai shamat, ushmait avu amarin, Moshe v'torato emet, vehen bada'in. So the Arab said, come listen, what do you hear? What voice do you hear coming out of the hole? And Rabba bar Chana listened, and he heard voices saying, Moshe and his Torah are true, and they are liars. They is referring to themselves. Korach and the people that were with him down there, they are testifying, Moshe is right, we were wrong the whole time. Amar li kol tilatin yomeh me'adar lehul gehinam lehacha kebasar bakalachat v'amri hachi Moshe v'torato emet v'hen bada'in. And the Arab explains that every 30 days they return to this place. A Gehinam is like a boiling pot. And so they keep moving around to different places of Gehinam, and there's a cycle. Every 30 days they come back to this spot where those holes are, and you could hear them every month saying, Moshe is true, and we are liars. Amar li, tachvi lachecha denashke ar'a urki'a hadadeh. Come the next stop, I'm going to show you where the heaven and earth touch each other. Shekarta lesilta itnachta bechavta deriki'a. So they went to that place, and Rabba bar Chana had a basket with him, and he wanted to put it down, so he put it in the window of heavens. I guess he was right in the mid place where they meet. He's kind of on earth, and he puts it there in that window, that portal that goes to heavens. And then he went to pray. There's a halakha till today. You're not allowed to hold other things while you're praying. You can hold a sidur because you need it, but you shouldn't be holding other items because you should be concentrating on your prayer. So he's holding a basket. He needs his water bottle and snacks for the way. So he puts it down, he prayed, and then he went back and he could not find his basket in the same place anymore. So Rabba bar Chana asked the Arab, are there thieves here? Does someone take it up here in heaven? There's thieves? la. And the Arab explained that this is the heavenly sphere that turns around. So the earth is in one sphere, and then the heavens are another sphere, and they rotate around each other. And you put it in the window, and then that window passed, and it comes around every 24 hours. So just wait here till tomorrow, and then you will find your basket. There's no thieves. This is just the cycle of the heavens. Rabbi Yochanan mishta'eh zimna chada hava ka'azlinan besfinta v'chazena nahu kavra dapeke l'reshe miyama v'damyan ayne ketre sihare unfus maya mitarte zime ketre mibere desura. Rabbi Yochanan says, one time we were traveling in a ship and we saw a fish, and it took its head out of the sea just for a moment, and its eyes looked like two moons, and the water that scattered from its two gills were like the two rivers of Sura. That's how giant this fish was. Rav Safra mishta'ez imna chada hava ka'azlinan besfinta v'chazena hu kavra da'apeke l'reshe mimaya v'hava le karne v'chakik ale ana birya kala shebayam v'havenan Ve'avena telat me'a parseh va'zelna lepuma de livyatan. Similar story Rav Safra says. We were traveling in a ship once and we saw a fish. It took its head out of the sea and it had horns. And inscribed on the horns it said, I'm just a lowly creature of the sea, and I am 300 parsangs long. In other words, even this little humble creature is 300 parsangs long. Imagine what the great creatures are alike. And I am going into the mouth of Livyatan. So imagine how big Livyatan is, that Livyatan could just swallow up and contain this fish. Amar Rav Asher, hu izad yamahu debechisha v'it la karne. Rav Asher explains that this is the goat of the sea. The idea is that for every land animal, there's a parallel animal down in the sea. There's horses and there's seahorses. So this is the sea version of a goat, and that's why he has horns. Rabbi Yochanan mishta'eh zimena hada hava ka'azlina besfinta v'chazena hit kar talita dahavu ka mikabe'e ba abanim tovot umargaliot v'hadri la mine dechavre dimkare karsha. Rabbi Yochanan says we were traveling on a ship once, and he saw a crate with precious jewels and pearls set in the crate, and it was floating around in the water. We saw it from our boat, and there was a species of fish called sharks encircling it. It must have been something very precious that these sharks are encircling it, and also very dangerous. But nevertheless, they wanted to check it out. Nechet bar amora'e le'atuye urgash uba'e lishmete le'atme ushta zika dechala unhat. So a diver went down to retrieve the crate. Here's a relief of divers from ancient Assyria. So there were people that knew how to hold their breath for a long time and go down into the water. Not a great idea considering that there are sharks there. And sure enough, the sharks got angry, and they went and they were about to bite the diver's thigh. But the diver had a plan. He took a flask of vinegar and threw it upon the treasure, and then the sharks went away. Nefak ba kala amarlan ma'it lechu behadeh kartalita dedebitu derebi chanina ben dosa datida deshadya techelta ba lesadike lealma deate. And so now that the sharks went away, the diver was able to retrieve it, but a divine voice came and said, what are you doing with this treasure? The crate that belongs to the wife of Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. She, in the future, is going to use the value of this treasure to go and buy wool, blue wool, techelet, which is very expensive, to make sisit for the righteous people in the world to come. And so this is set aside. That's why the sharks are guarding it. It's out in the middle of the ocean. It's none of your business. This is awaiting for a future reward. We learned something incidentally interesting from here, that according to this source, a woman is permitted to tie the knots of sisit. There is a lot of discussion about this, but this is one of the sources to prove that it's permitted because it's his wife. that would be preparing these sisit. Rav Yehuda Hindua Mishta'eh. Rav Yehuda from India. Very interesting that there were sages all the way in India. Zimna Chada Hava Azlinan Bisfinta. One time he was traveling in a ship. V'chazina hu eben tabad hava hadir la tanina nechet bar amora'e le'atuya. And they saw a precious jewel that was encircled by a snake that was guarding it. And again, a diver, very brave diver, went down to fetch it. However, a snake came and it was going to swallow not only the diver, but even it was going to swallow the whole ship. That's how big the snake was. Luckily, a raven came and cut off the snake's head. It was so big and was bleeding so much, the whole river turned into blood. But another snake came, took the precious stone, hung it on the dead snake, and it recovered. So you see, the stone was not only precious, it was also miraculous. It could bring back to life the dead snake. And now the story happened all over again, that the snake came and was about to swallow the ship that Rav Yehuda Hindua was on. And again the raven came just at the last moment and cut off the head of the snake. And this time the raven took the precious stone and put it onto the ship. That way the other snake now won't be able to get it and just to revive the dead snake. Now the people on the boat had some salted birds, salted so that they would be preserved. That was going to be their food. They put the stone on these dead salted birds, and they came back to life and flew away. So you see again that this magic stone was able to bring back to life the birds. This may have some allegorical meaning. The stone may be Torah, that when there's persecution, you go to the Torah, and that will bring renewed spiritual life. Tenora banan, ma'aseh Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yoshua shayu ba'in bisfina. V'haya Rabbi Eliezer yashen v'Rabbi Yoshua ne'or. One time, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua were traveling in a ship, and Rabbi Eliezer was sleeping, and Rabbi Yoshua was awake. Nizdaza Rabbi Yoshua v'nin'a Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Yehoshua trembled, something scared him, and that woke up Rabbi Eliezer. Amar lo, ma'azeh Yoshua? Rabbi Eliezer said, what happened, Yoshua? Mipnei ma nizdazata? How come you trembled? Amar lo, ma'or gadol ra'iti bayam. He says, I saw a great light in the sea. Amar lo, shema einav shel Livyatan ra'ita dichtib einav ke'af'apeh shachar. He says, oh, must be that you saw the eyes of the Livyatan. As the Pasuk in Yov says, that the eyes of Livyatan are like the eyelids of morning. Beforehand, we saw that big fish whose eyes were like the moon, and here we see that Livyatan's eyes are compared to a morning sun. Amar Rav Asher, Amar Lihuna bar Natan, Zimna chada hava ka'azlinan bemadbera, ve'avai atma debisra behadan. Rav Asher says that Rav Huna bar Natan told him that one time he was traveling in the desert, and they had a piece of meat with them that they were planning to eat. So petachna ve'nakirna ve'anachna a'isbe, and so they're ready to eat it. So they cut it open, and they took out the gid hanashe, they did nikur, and they took out any forbidden parts and put it on the side, and they put the whole thing on the grass, and they went to get wood to make a fire to cook it. Ademaitinan sibe chalam atma vetavenan. But by the time they came back from getting the wood, the thigh had repaired itself, and we roasted it. In other words, somehow this thigh that was one piece, they cut it up, and then when they came back, miraculously, it was all back together. Anyway, they roasted it. Ki hadaran lebatat shata chazinu lanhu gumre dahavuka melachashi. So they ate it, and then they left, and they came back a year later, after 12 months, and they saw the coals were still glowing. So there's some kind of magical place here. So they wanted to know what it was. Ki hatai lekame damemad amarli hahu isba sam tere hava. Hanu gumre deritma havu. They came to Memad, and Memad explained to them that grass was the drug of life, and that's why this piece of meat that you cut up, it came back together, similar to the jewel that brings things back to life, right? This was in the process of bringing it back together. Those coals were made from wood. We're talking about coals not made out of coal, but the embers of wood, and it was from a broom tree. This is a broom in bloom, and these are known that they retain their heat for longer than coals. Not sure if it's for a whole year, but after all, they were in that place on near that grass, and that kept them going. We continue on the theme of giant sea creatures. Vayibra Elohim et hataninim hagedolim. Back in Bereshit, it says Hashem created the great sea monsters. It's plural. Hacha targimu ar zile deyama. Here in Bavel, they say this is a reference to the sea oryx. Rabbi Yochanan amar ze Livyatan nachash bariach v'Livyatan nachash akaton. Shenemar bayom hahu yifkod Hashem b'charbo hakasha. Rabbi Yochanan in Eretz Yisrael, however, says it's talking about two types of Livyatan. There's the one that is bariach, meaning straight, and the one akarton, that means bent. These two Livyatans are referenced in this pasuk in Yeshaya. You have to look at the full pasuk. Bayomahu yifkod Adonai becharbo hakasha vehagedola vehazaka. In that day, Hashem will punish with a great, cruel, and mighty sword. Al Livyatan nachash beriach. Nachash Livyatan Nachash Akarton V'Haragat Tanin Asher Bayam. So he will punish these two, this Nachash Bariach and Livyatan Nachash Akarton, one that's straight and one that's bent. And he will kill the tanin, that which is singular. So one of these things will die. What does this mean? So Rabbi Yochanan says it's referring to tanim. He created these two creatures. Following up on that, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. כל מה שברא הקדוש ברוך הוא בעולמו זכר ונקבה ברעם, אף לוויתן נחש בריח ולוויתן נחש הקרטון, זכר ונקבה ברעם, ואלמלא נזקקין זה לזה, מחריבין כל העולם כולו. Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav that everything that Hashem created in the world, He created male and female, and that is true also for this straight Nachash and also for the crooked Livyatan. Those species also, there is a male and a female. And if the male and female Livyatan would mate, then their offspring would be so great it would destroy the entire world. So Hashem had to protect creation from that happening. Me'asa HaKadosh Baruch Hu sires et hazachar ve'harag hanekeba umlacha lasadikim la'atid labo shene'emar ve'harag et hatanin asher bayam. So Hashem took two steps. First, He castrated the male, and He also killed the female. Well, really, one or the other would make sure that they cannot mate, but in case maybe there's another one that might impregnate the female, so He does both of these. And He salted the female so that its meat would be preserved for the righteous in the future to eat and enjoy. And how do you know that He killed one of them? That's the end of the pasuk in Yeshaya that we saw, that He killed the tanin that's in the water, and that is a reference to one of those. That's the female Livyatan. Vaf behemot behar elef zacharun keba beraam. And not only the Livyatan, but also these giant beasts that are referred to at the end of Iyov and in Tehillim. They're called the beasts of the 1,000 hills because they're so big. They have to graze on 1,000 hills. And that also had a male and a female. And if they would mate with each other, the offspring would destroy the whole world. So what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do to prevent them from mating? He again castrated the male. This gets into a halacha. Halacha, one is not allowed to castrate animals. So how could Hashem do it? Okay, good question. It's an agadah, but in any case, otherwise it will destroy the whole world. So this is sakanat nefashot. It's certainly more important than this halacha. And he furthermore cooled down the nekeva so it would not be in heat, it would not be desirous of mating, and he kept it that way so that the female will be around for the future and to be eaten and enjoyed as reward for the righteous. As the pasuk says in Iyov, look, now its strength is in its loins. That's referring to the zachar, so that's why it's castrated, and its force is in the stays of his body. That's referring to the female. And therefore, by cooling her down, so they would not mate. Hatam name lisarse lazachar velisannena lanekeva. Now we ask, if that's what Hashem did to these giant beasts, why didn't he do the same thing for the Leviathan? And there also he did castrate the male, but why did he have to kill the female Leviathan? Why not just make it cool and not want to mate? Takim Perise. And the answer is that fish are unrestrained and impossible to cool them. Animals, they have different seasons, and sometimes they're in the mood and sometimes not, but fish you cannot cool. Veli abid ipcha. So why not do the opposite and kill the male Leviathan? Why did he kill the female Leviathan? A couple of answers. Some say that it's better to assault the female. The female meat is tastier and salt's better, and that will be better for the reward in the future. Or another answer is that the pasuk today is Rosh Chodesh. The pasuk that we read in Barachi Nafshi says that here is the Leviathan that you Hashem created to play with it. In other words, Hashem is so great that even the giant fish, the Leviathan, Hashem just plays with it like his rubber ducky. And so it would be appropriate to use it to say the male. If to say the female, that Hashem plays with this female, that would not be respectful, not be proper to say, and that's why he kills the female and so leaves only the male around to be his plaything. So how come over here regarding the animals, how come Hashem just cooled it? Why not kill it and salt it? Because salted fish tastes good, but salted meat does not taste as good, and does not preserve as well as fish does in salt. ואמר רב יהודה אמר רב, בשעה שביקש הקדוש ברוך הוא לברוא את העולם, אמר לו לסד של ים, פתח פיך ובלע כל מימות שבעולם. Rav Yehuda, the name of Rav, who we already saw, says another Agadah, that when the Hashem wanted to create the world, so remember there was water, v'choshech al penei tehom, the water was all over, all chaotic, and it was covering the earth too. So Hashem had to contain the water. So water represents the force of chaos and destruction. And so Hashem told the minister of the sea, open your mouth and swallow all the waters of the world. Presumably this minister of the sea is himself made out of water, but yet he has to swallow the water and to contain the water, and thereby control it and make room for the rest of creation. And the minister says, it's enough what I have, my own waters I have to control. Now I have to go and swallow all the other waters too? I'm not doing it. Miyad ba'at bo v'harago. So Hashem struck the minister of the sea and killed him. Shene'emar bechocho raga hayam ubitbunato machas rahav. As Pasuk in Yov says, he stirs up the sea with his power, referring to Hashem, and by his understanding, he smites through Rahav. This Pasuk itself is making reference to some ancient Near Eastern legends that talk about the young warrior god like Baal that comes and has a fight with his grandmother Tiamat, which is the same name, is the same root as Tehom. Of course, in Hebrew, in the Torah, it's not the name of a god; it's just the name of deep waters. But in ancient Near Eastern mythology, it is in fact the sea monster goddess, and they have this cosmic battle, and Baal destroys his grandma Tiamat and uses the body, puts it in half up and half down, and uses it to create the world. In other words, the world world is created through a cosmic battle where the sea monster gets killed. And so Iyov is making subtle reference to that, and this whole midrash is also making reference to that, with the important difference that in this midrash there's no battle. It's true that the Sar Shel Yam, the minister of the sea, refuses, so there is tension. Now in the Torah, obviously in Bereshit Perek Aleph, Hashem just says it and everything happens. There's no tension. That's completely gone. Removed from in the Torah. In the Torah is completely monotheistic. Hashem has all power, omnipotent of everything else in the world. But this midrash, which is relying on the pasuk in a poetic way, is making a hint to the independent personality and defiant personality of the waters, being the force of chaos and evil, and they refuse, but obviously they are no match for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who hits it and destroys it, making reference to this pasuk. So this is actually a very deep midrash that has references to a lot of ancient ideas. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Shema Amina, Saro Shel Yam Rahav Shemo V'Maleh Mayim Mechasim Oto En Kol Birya Yichola La'amod Berecho. Rabbi Yitzchak says we can learn from here that the name of the minister of the sea is Rahav, which was one of the names of ancient Near Eastern sea monsters. And if not, that the water was covering this sea monster, the minister, then no being would be able to withstand its terrible smell, its giant corpse stench. Shene'emar lo yareu v'lo yashchitu b'chol har kodshi v'gomer kamayim layam mechasim. Al tikre layam mechasim ela lesara shel yam mechasim. Pasuk in Yeshaya that says in the future they shall not hurt nor destroy anyone on the holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of knowledge of Hashem, and the waters cover as much as the waters cover the sea. Now, the sea is made out of water. So what do you mean that waters cover the sea? Oh, so don't read it layam mechasim, but to the minister of the sea they cover, meaning that the waters are covering the body of the minister of the sea. And that's good, because that protects everybody from having to smell it. V'amar Rav Yehuda amar Rav, Yarden yoseh me'arat pam yas. Tanyan me'achi Yarden yoseh me'arat pam yas u'melech b'yama shel Sibche u'b'yama shel Tiberia u'mitgalgel v'yored layam hagadol u'mitgalgel v'yored ad shemagia lepiv shel Livyatan shenemar yiptach ki yagiach Yarden el pihu. Rav Yehuda also taught in the name of Rav that the Jordan River originates in the cave of Pamyas. This is the same as the well-known place today called Banyas, a place where hikers go in Israel. And in ancient times, there was a spring in the cave, and that spring was one of the sources of water for the Jordan River. There has been an earthquake in between and moved the spring outside of the cave, so it's a little different nowadays, but it used to be the source of water for the Jordan. And furthermore, there's a Braita that supports what Rav said, that the Jordan River comes from the cave of Pamyas and then travels to the Sea of Sibchi and then goes to the Sea of Galilee and rolls down into the Great Sea, and it keeps going until it reaches the mouth of Livyatan. As the Pasuk says in Yov, he is confident, though the Jordan rushes forth into his mouth. And so all that water is going to feed the Livyatan. Is very thirsty. Matkif la Rava bar Ula, hai bebehemot behar elif ketib. So, however, Rava bar Ula says this is not a good source from this pasuk, and seems to be asking a question on the Braita. Or maybe Rav is the one that's quoting this pasuk. But in any case, this pasuk is talking about the great beast, not about Livyatan. That's the one that has the Jordan, that's drinking all the water from the Jordan, rushing into its mouth. So why are you saying that it's talking about the Livyatan that's drinking it? Ela marava bar ola, ematai behemot behare elef betuchot, bizman shemagiach yarden befiv shel Livyatan. We can answer it. When is the great beast confident? When the Jordan River rushes into the mouth of Livyatan. The great beast and Livyatan are dependent one upon each other. They're friends and ultimately mortal enemies. They're going to kill each other. So as long as Livyatan is well and good and healthy, so then the Behemoth also knows that it's okay. Siman, Yamim, Gabriel, Ra'eb. We're going to see the next traditions are about seas, Gabriel, and hungry. Ki ata Rav Dimi amar Rabbi Yochanan, mai dichtiv ki hu al Yamim yesada, ve'al neharot yechoneneha. What does this pasuk mean? That Hashem has founded the world upon seas and established it upon the floods. Elu shiva yamim v'arba'a neharot shemakifin et Eretz Yisrael, ve'elu hen shiv'a yamim. Yamah shel Tiberia, ve'yamah shel Sodom, ve'yamah shel Chelat, ve'yamah shel Chalata, ve'yamah shel Sibchi, ve'yam Aspamya, ve'yam Hagadol. Ve'elu hen arba'a neharot, Yarden, ve'yarmuch, ve'keromyon, ufiga. It means that there are 7 seas and 4 rivers that surround Eretz Yisrael. And the 7 seas are the Sea of Tiberias, the Sea of Sodom, that's the Dead Sea, the Sea of Halat, Sea of Chelata, the Sea of Sibchi, the Sea of Aspamya, and the Great Sea, meaning the Mediterranean. And these are the 4 rivers, the Yarden, the Yarmuch, the Keromyon, and the Figa rivers are the ones that surround Eretz Yisrael. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen.